Now, back in Beijing, Commerce Minister Chen Deming met Wednesday with American Commerce Secretary Gary Locke. The U.S. said its main goal is to expand cooperation with China in the field of clean energy. Zhang Lu reports.
This is Locke's first visit to China as Commerce Secretary, and topping his list for discussion was clean energy. The nearly two-hour dialogue also included issues of trade deficit, intellectual property rights protection, and trade protectionism. Early on Wednesday, Locke visited a clean energy power plant with core technology from the U.S. and a China-U.S. joint venture manufacturing clean engines. Locke called them good examples of cooperation. The Commerce Secretary drove the point home with American businessmen in China.
Clean energy may be the greatest economic opportunity of the 21st century. As two of the world's most productive and innovative economies, the United States and China are uniquely positioned to create the solar, wind, biofuel, and other renewable technologies that the world wants and needs.
China is a developing economy and says its responsibility in cutting carbon dioxide emissions is different from the U.S. That said, China has already adopted the most aggressive energy efficiency program in the world. Almost 40% of its domestic economic stimulus is going towards green projects. The U.S. has other concerns behind the green initiative.
A bilateral trade imbalance that simply cannot be sustained. Last year, the U.S. trade deficit with China reached almost $270 billion. In the months and years ahead, President Obama will seek to restore balance to that relationship.
The U.S. has considerably advanced clean energy. Exporting the technology to China will help reduce its huge deficit. Together with Gary Locke, U.S. Energy Secretary Stephen Chu is also visiting Beijing. The visit from the U.S. Commerce and Energy Secretaries helps pave the way for the first China-U.S. strategic and economic dialogue in Washington at the end of this month. Energy and environmental issues are not new to bilateral relations, but whether new approaches can be adopted by the U.S. may change the direction of talks. Both sides agree that addressing common concerns in a constructive way is in the interests of the two important economies. Zhang Lu, CCTV, Beijing.
Well, Gary Locke and U.S. Energy Secretary Stephen Chu have met Chinese ministers in charge of trade, technology and health. Chu called on developing countries to adopt emissions reduction targets. Stephen Chu says while the U.S. and other developed nations were the first to emit industrial greenhouse gases, developing economies are fast catching up. The two countries also announced plans for a joint clean energy research center. With their headquarters in both countries, the center will focus on coal and clean buildings and vehicles.
The two governments have decided to set up the Joint Research Center on Clean Energy after discussions and will spend $15 million to set up the center.